welcome you to the Worldwide Educators Show, where our focus is the natural environment that supports all of us. And as you just heard, this is a song for the natural environment that was presented by Ava. And you can test that for yourself and see what life has to show you. Our show generally covers topics that I would say most people just glass over. We get into the deeper, more interesting part of things. We talk a lot about chemtrails and GMO foods, things that everybody could pay attention to and make better choices with. And just for your information, we have nothing to do with the political, religious, spiritual, transcendental, any of these weird systems out there. We are just free, real beings of light. And speaking of free, real beings of light, we have Duane and Ava. Hello, guys.
Ava there?
Hello, Chris. Hello, Duane.
Here's Ava.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes.
You wake up? Yes. Oh.
Yeah, the time change. And Kelsey and Val are here also. Also free, real beings of light.
Yes, 1 hour more to sleep this night.
I don't even pay attention to that stuff anymore.
It seems about the same, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'm a little bit like Arizona when it comes to that. I don't even care. Does the sun come up? Okay, there it is. Cool.
Duane is always now.
Always now, yes. It's fun. It's fun time always now. So today on the program, I'm going to, it's going to be a little lengthy here, but it's going to be fun information. And that is, we're going to go over human history a little bit, and the people on the planet, and bring it up to date so people get a better reference here. Now, for most people on the planet, because they've come into this lifetime and they've forgotten their past lifetimes, it's going to rather contradict the ideas that they've absorbed for the longest time that have been created here. But we will have fun, and people can decide whatever they like. It's up to them. And for most people, they're going to be coming back here for more lifetimes anyhow, because they keep deciding it, and it's their choice. That's okay. We just present what we do, and it can be proven by each individual themselves. So here we go. Basically, the planet itself, as it evolved to where there could be life on it. Of course, just like anything that happens, if we build a house or something, all of a sudden it becomes a residence, not only for the people that move in, but for crickets, bugs, flies, spiders, whatever. Everything starts to move in, doesn't it? Seen or unseen, it's all of a sudden there. Termites inside the walls eating the house immediately because, they love the new wood, etc. And where I live in Orange County, yes, it's usually Douglas fir, and the termites love it. This is Termiteville. But you don't see the termites all the time. That's just it. The house looks really good. You're living in it, and as years go by, sometimes you see these little dust trails. But you really don't see what's going on, you might say, behind the scenes. And for the most part, this is how it is and how the world has been created so far. And so real fast, let's go back. And the real history from the officialness of, the governments and the religious orders and other agencies, etc., they really haven't given the audience out there or the public or the masses the real history of the world. And it only goes back so far. And really, they coordinated these ideas into a particular to, keep people basically unaware and herded into a particular factor. So we're going to jump back a little bit and we'll have to use our imagination to make this fun, and that is that as the first inhabitants came to the planet, where did they come from? Because they came from somewhere. They really did. But of course, we have these doctrines that specify this religious overtone. So, again, each person decides, and it's not a matter of debate here or what's believable or truthful or whatever. It's a matter of what really took place. And again, this is where each person can prove this to themselves. They have all the answers if they're willing to explore and see this for themselves. But most people aren't, and that's fine too, whatever choice they make. So the first inhabitants of this planet actually created certain situations, and they themselves, just like we see here, we have workforce or whatever, and still the idea of slave trades and all this, and a lot of the workforce is that anyhow, is still going on, and this is what took place in the beginning, because those that came here, they needed people to build things, so they had a workforce. They created certain things for their situation, and as time went on, they also established different ideas to keep the workforce, satisfied in a particular mode. So they keep working, and they keep doing things, and this is where religions, politics, and all these things started. They were created out of nothing. The gods of man, the doctrines, etc. These ideas were created to keep people busy and to, you might say, keep them tame and in line, and ideas invented around them and the doctrines, etc. And so as we come into this the so-called modern world, as time comes into the more present time, we've established, in other words, those that, the governments, the political system, and those hidden behind the scenes of these agencies have established, the certain patterns to keep the masses in control, because as the world becomes more industrialized, this is a huge control factor, etc. And so we have many movies and many variety of, viewpoints going on here. But again, and it's a real discipline to look to oneself to really get the real answers to things. But everything is available. And for the most part, most people have been taught to be one-dimensional in a three-dimensional world. And when I mention this one-dimensional idea, they think, well, no, this is a three-dimensional world or four-dimensional, whatever, etc. They like to think about it. But actually, the viewpoint here is basically black and white, good and bad, right and wrong, up and down, you believe it or you don't, whatever. That's one-dimensional. And this is basically the viewpoint here for most people, because this is how they've been taught and conditioned through the different systems. And today, basically, you have the political, the religious, spiritual, educational, scientific, social systems, and really these are all ideas to keep the masses in control. You'll notice that the birds and animals in nature, what we call nature here on the earth, they don't align themselves or agree to any of these things. They're fine, and they work with the natural environment. Those that live in the society and obey these laws, rules, and regulations and create them also, these are the people that are destroying the natural environment, and we see it radically today. So we all come up through lifetimes, whether we're conscious of this or not, whether we believe it or not, and this idea of belief has, again, been a marketing ploy to most people to believe in space gods and things like that. And yes, there are other beings that exist in other dimensions and levels. Yes, they are. And people can call them gods or whatever, and actually they are the governor lords on different levels, and anyone can meet them. It's not a mystery at all. Anyone can learn to meet these people, these beings, these entities, whatever. It's no big deal. And they can be kind of clothed in mystery, like in the movie The Wizard of Oz, where there's a curtain and there's a lot of smoke and a lot of noise and funny things going on, and sometimes machinery, and, kind of like in these old science fiction movies, and that's really what it is. It's a lot of hocus pocus. Because realistically, we're all beings of light having our experience here and in different body types, from aliens to humans to other forms, animals, birds, etc. Each, I call them U-tunes, or each awareness is going through its progression from lifetime to lifetime until it reaches that point to where it is actually ready to supersede creation, reincarnation, and these ideas, rebirth, and the cause and effect karma in creation altogether. And so this is a big journey because life is even bigger. So creation is in life itself. It is not life itself. It is a simulator. It is a simulated life. And so how long a person stays in this position, it's really by choice and free will. Now, I was brought up a certain way for many lifetimes with what I term as the real universal guides. And this has always been their position, and basically Yabul Sakabi, Rebazar Tars, and others. In previous lifetimes, the person known as Paul Twitchell in this lifetime, who is no longer here on the physical, in other words, he is here and now with me all the time, and Rebazar, and who I call the boys or the real guides, they're always with me. But they don't always, not all of them have physical bodies. They're on the real side, what I call the real side, the invisible side to the physical eye. Now, I was brought up through lifetimes of this training to prepare for what I'm presenting now, because it's huge. It takes a lot, and to also, you might say, get through what has been decided here that's mainly deception. This world looks good, but it's mainly constructed out of deception, and things here can only last so long because deception only lasts so long in creation. So unless there's the reality life is, which I call the all-aliveness, and the real universe is supporting what is in creation, then eventually it just decays and dwindles. But it looks good for a while. Kind of like our bodies when they're young, they look good for a while, but eventually you might say the life goes out of them, and eventually we leave the body. And what people have been taught here and educated with is a one-dimensional, robotized, militarized educational institutions. They're really institutions that many people go to later on in life, and that's what they are. People are institutionalized here. In other words, they're in a matrix that's framed a particular way. Now, again, my process in lifetimes, as Paul and I were prepared to come into this lifetime, Paul was to do his presentation first, and he labeled his presentation, he labeled it Ekankar, and this was his choice. He had the choice to label it anything he wanted. That's what he chose. He was brought up through certain so-called teachers and masters, etc., and many of them claim him as the student, but the real universal guides were actually backing him and just moving him along so that he could gain experience in these other areas and then refer to them so there would be a comparison. And so he formulated this, his ideas, and creatively put them into motion, and kind of the official date was October 22nd, 1965, when he received the Rod of Power from Rebazar Tars. Now, most of the world does not know what this Rod of Power thing is, this reality, but really it's just a term that is the all-aliveness of the all is, and Paul referred to this as Rebazar spoke to him in his books. Paul wrote about this, the isness. This was hinted at, but Paul first started off with the God idea, which was an invention here on the earth, because most people are into the God idea or the spirit idea, which is basically off the astral realm, which is the secondary light, which is knowledge. And this is a start for everybody, and this is where Paul started, because he knew he had to take it a step at a time. And so this rod of power that most people do not know about is a true reality with the real universal guides, and they prepare certain individuals for this on this level here in the physical realm. And so this is a directness to the real universes beyond creation itself. And this is where most people do not understand this because it just becomes a little bit too much for them. And so this is what Paul termed this reality at the time, the rod of power, which is fine. And so with that, he has the backing of life itself and the real universal guides to present to the world what he does. And as he does it honorably and sincerely, because this is a pure reality that is all alive, this is life itself, an expression of the all is itself, which is like a big ball of sun, like a big sun in the sky, and this is what the suns represent here on all the different levels. They are a representative, simply a symbol or a reference to the all is itself. And this is really an inconceivable position. It becomes so that it would seem as though it doesn't exist at all. This is just how far out you might say it is. And so as Paul took his position here, he used different terms and labels, and he first used the God idea. Paul wrote the book, The Tiger Sang, and I remember when I was young that, and I was a surfer, and I still am, and Rebazar was with me, brought me into this life, kept prompting me at a certain age. I was very young, about 17, 18 years old, and even before that I had many experiences all this life that I never divulged to most people because I was not to say anything. At a certain point started to prompt me into getting familiar with what Paul was presenting. And so, each lifetime becomes a particular, even though we have experiences from past lifetimes, when we take on a new body and new mind, we have to deal with the configurations of the new body and the new mind and the new surroundings we have, because each lifetime is different. One of my 8 books is From Then to Now, which is my reference to the past life before this one, where I was a half-breed Indian, known as Goldie, and in there, Rebazar is teaching me, etc. And Paul referred to some of his past lives. One of them was in the drums of Ek, and Paul and I knew each other in a past lifetime, but we were both doing our own thing, but at the same time taught by Rebazar and the real guides at the time. Now, as Paul came into this life, the term of the real universal guides was held back, and he created his Ekankar, and so he established certain doctrines, certain writings, etc., in his books and what have you, and a lot of people had experiences along these lines, and he referred to Rebazar and the boys, Yabal, Gopal Das, Fubi Kwants, and many, many others, as Ek masters. This was kind of the setup for his time, and to see how far this would go. Anything that you do here, you're kind of like a test pilot in creation, because it can go any way at all because of free will. And this is very, very real. Prophecy and all these things like that are simply along the lines of something that's been decided and done, and then the prophecy comes out because it's cause and effect. That's all. So when anybody goes down to the UPS store and does a next day letter and says, and the fellow behind the counter says, well, it'll be there tomorrow, that's actually prophecy, you see, because the cause is there. You mailed the letter. The effect is it will arrive because we're going to make it arrive. And this is really prophecy. So many people are mystified by this, but once you see behind the scenes how this works, it's no big deal. It's just cause and effect here in creation. So as Paul created his position here, he used certain terms to build from, and basically using the God idea, he created a God worlds chart, which he called, and showed the different levels, and basically starting off aligning with the 5 bodies of man, which are the physical, astral, causal, mental, and etheric, and these correspond to the different faculties we have. The physical is the 5 senses, the astral is the emotional body with the sensations, the feelings, etc. The causal is the memory body, where some of the Akashic records are kept there, not all of them, but some of them in the past lives. The next one is the mental, where the so-called Lord God or the gods of man are. This is the Kalam God, because people have a mental idea of their God. So this is the governor Lord there. He's called the Lord God, and we call him the Kal or the Kalam God, etc. There's many, many names. Each religion, each invented religion has their own name for this individual. He's just a governor, and anybody can go see him. But he likes to play a lot of tricks. He's a funny guy, and just like politicians, he's really a politician, a political puppet of himself, you might say. And he's got this creature that's been created in the lower worlds called the influence, which always bugs him. So they have a good time together. Anyhow, as you read my books, the Adventurous series, you learn a lot about this and how it works. And then the next level is the etheric, which is the unconscious part of ourselves, higher part of the mind. But it's also the intuitive part. This is where some people are very intuitive. They pay attention to this. And this is the last sheath or body closest to the real awareness of the individual. But there's one more level there. It's actually the 6th level. That is the deep dark border that houses, encases the psychic realms, and then the 7th level is the real universes. Now, when Paul was here, he referred to the 5th level as what he called the soul plane. And at that time, it was real, and at the time, Paul gave initiations, which were real at the time, because Paul was true and sincere and very honorable with everything, so it all worked accordingly. But as time went on and Paul passed, in other words, his part was done. He had set into motion the foundation, and with all these ideas, etc. And most people, they do not see the heart of the matter. They really just see the surfacey part and the outer front that is created. So anyone can create marketing ploy. It can be a benefit or it can be a detriment, and it can be very deceptive, which basically is the world today. Huge deception going on with all these agencies, etc. Huge, huge deception. Most people are afraid to see through it, and this is because of the fear-based systems that have been created here. They've been created because of fear, and no one has to fear anything. They can see through this and really free themselves. So, as Paul left, a fellow by the name of Darwin Gross was asked to step in, and if he would, take on this task of, continuing this on, and taking on the responsibility of making sure that those who had stepped up, the membership that Paul had created, that they're okay and that they can be, guided along in the physical sense. And the boys were there backing him at the time. Well, as time went on, Darwin started to become more interested in himself only, and eventually actually became an embezzler of the funds and did all kinds of funny things and became very controlling, and etc. At some point, the boys asked him to step aside, kindly asked him to step aside. So, and this was okay. They gave him the opportunity. Darwin was like a caretaker. He was never actually stood in or given the rod of power. I myself had a lot of experiences with Darwin. I really liked Darwin. I knew him personally. I was on a building committee and many things with him, had many experiences on the real side, but also saw him when he started to, just take things into his own hands and decided that he was more important than everybody else. And so the next fellow was prepared as a caretaker also, and his name was Harold Klemp. And I knew Harold very, very well. Harold used to be down here in Orange County, actually Costa Mesa, him and his former wife. And I was very close to Patty Simpson when I first got in 1970. I actually joined the organization in 1970. This is, Rebazar had prompted me to do so, so I read Paul's, the first book I read was The Tiger's Fang. And I figured, okay, well, this is really great. This is cool. I'll go for this. And within the first year, I was out doing public lectures because I loved this. And this was kind of like the cowboy and Indian days, you might say, of the what I call now the corporation at that time, because there was hardly anybody around. Patty was in Corona Del Mar. I used to visit her, and I first met Helen Beard. There was Archie Hurst, and my first teacher her name was Gail Reck. And so as the years went on, I was showing a lot of things that were taking place from Rebazar and the boys, which I did not tell at the time. That was to come out later, and I was not shown everything, but I was shown a lot as things progressed along. And then the transition came around 81 or so. Darwin and Harold, I was a higher initiate at the time. I went to many of the higher initiates meetings, and I remember one where Darwin and Harold were together, and I would see them on the real side too, and Darwin was pulling his own way. And so eventually Darwin stepped aside because he'd already built a house in Oregon and already had decided to create another path called ATOM, A-T-O-M, Ancient Teachings of the Master. This was his choice. He had decided to do that. And so Harold stepped in. This was announced. It stepped in, etc. They made deals behind the scenes for the membership, which most people do not know about, etc. I do. I saw what was going on. There was even lawsuits and things like this involved. I wasn't following it real close at the time. I myself, I remember when my former wife and I, went out to Sedona. At the time, there was a house out there called the Wings of the Wind, and they wanted to build a spiritual temple or what out there. Well, that never came to pass. And the lady that we met out there was Helen Fry, who later on actually passed away during this lifetime. And while we were out there with her, walking the property with Darwin and several of the other people on the committee, when I came back, my wife had sprained her ankle, so she was sitting in there talking to Helen this whole time. And Helen said, well, I want to come back as your child, and this is my daughter. And so it's a very, very interesting adventure, how this has all taken place. And so as this sequence in my life, this time frame passed, and then Harold stepped into the position. Harold started off fine, and one of the experiences that he expressed was with Paul on the real side, and it was like in a farmland setting because this was kind of Harold's background. He was more religious and in that type of setting, and the farm type idea, and that he was to kind of clean up the farm because of what Darwin had done and how he had influenced a lot of people, and they really needed assistance to kind of straighten up and see things better, you might say, so that they were okay. Well, things started off fine, but there were things in the wings, you might say, behind the curtain that even Harold didn't see, and that is when Miss Joni stepped up, and she was an agent of the reptilian Kalam God with the reptilians, with the reptilian regime, and her mission was to come in, subdue, seduce, and take over Harold and the organization, or the corporation, which I call now, and this is what she's done very, very well. And so most people didn't see this, and then all of a sudden the headquarters moves to Minnesota, and this was all a plan to kind of hide out, you might say, a little bit more so, but all this was created accordingly, and it's a very interesting history, and even the design of the temple is alien design. It's reptilian design, the roof and everything, but it was justified accordingly. And just like many of the government buildings and the capitals and these cathedrals, they're basically reptilian design because these were the original invaders of the earth, and they have controlled the systems since day one. And there's a lot of shape-shifting reptilians in all walks of life here that control the planet, and this is what most people do not see. So at a certain point, and it didn't take long, where Harold was totally subdued by her. And as we go along here and we come into the present era, as I was in this since 2001 when Paul and Revizar handed me the Rod of Power, it was time to bring out the new wave. And so I went through a lot of adjustment in the beginning. It took me years actually to adjust to all of this and what was taking place. But at the same time, Joni was working her side and creating situations which have come to be, in other words, the priest idea. And the priest idea and religion, worshiping and praying to space gods, is from the demonic era of the reptilians. It all is. And today most people are involved in religion. And this was the opportunity that Darwin and Harold were given to expand upon what Paul had presented, but they never had the awareness. This is the difference. They took on Paul's title. Darwin and Harold were both warned, don't do that. Don't take on Paul's title. The title of the Mahanta depicted as Paul created and termed was for what is known as the 14th circle. And that was his position, that was his awareness. Paul had achieved that for himself. That was his title. Well, in comes Darwin and Harold, and they are like, a couple of captains. We'll use the military as an example. And the general has left the office, and there's the jacket sitting on the chair, wrapped around the chair. And so what they decided to do is that they were not satisfied with the master title. They decided to take on the title of the Mahanta, the living act master, thinking in their minds that they were equal to what Paul was aware of. And this was very obvious on the real side, or what people term as the inner worlds, because everything is exposed there. And they never had the awareness. They had gone into the real universes, but it's like a person going to Rome a few times doesn't make you a Roman, and so they had never established themselves in the real universes. And again, Harold did the same thing. He has done the same thing the last 30 years with Joni. He's created a position to where he's like a little king, and it's all about him and Joni. And so she is the puppeteer controlling everything behind the scenes, and most of the membership today cannot see this. And what they really don't see is people who come into this today, like religions, etc., is that during Paul's time and even during Darwin's time, there was no worshiping and prayer. There were no priests and all these things. Again, this did not exist at all. And so I was the seventh initiate. I was an initiator. This is when the initiations were very real. In 1990, I was the seventh initiate. And so I moved up very fast, and then Harold decided to curtail the initiations, but Revizar was giving them to me on the real side up to the 14th circle when I took the Rod of Power in 2001. And so most people didn't know this, but at the time I also had a girlfriend, and she's in Book 2, A Journey to Real Freedom. Well, she was with me on Blue Sky Island, and for a time there, Harold and even Darwin had come, but at a certain point, Revizar kicked him out because they had become self-absorbed, and they were actually ruining people's lives. And as Harold hooked up with Joni, she started to tap line people in their astral bodies with the reptilians, sucking the life out of them. And today, many of these people, especially as they take their fake initiations, they get more tap lines in them, and this is where they're getting illnesses and even cancers, and they don't see it. Now, Miss Ava here that I know, she was with the organization for over 30 years with the corporation. And as I met her, she started to tell me her story, what was taking place, and the control, etc. And she never really liked the religious idea either. That isn't why she joined the corporation in the first place. But she also told me about all the physical problems she was having for many, many years in the organization and all the tap lining. And then when she met me, approximately 2 years ago or so, she started doing the New You, and to date, all those things are gone. She's basically healed herself because the Hue and the and the Amen and these blessing ideas, these are tap lines to people. The reptilians have infected everything because they are the original alien race there, and there's many alien races on the planet. There's some really good ones. But for the most part, it has been the reptilians. They control the political system, the world systems, the monetary system, etc. But this is gradually changing. And so, but it's according to the free will of people. And if they want to wake up, for those that don't, they will stay here into future lifetimes. And it's not hard to see if anybody just takes a few moments. You look at just the last 200 years from the cowboy and Indian days to how things are now. They didn't have chemtrails then. They didn't have microwave mind-controlling devices. They didn't have HAARP. They didn't have smart meters. They didn't have pharmaceuticals, lethal vaccines. I could go on and on. Didn't have all these things, but we have them today, and it's all seemingly in a great agreement that, gee, this is all okay. Fukushima has irradiated the oceans. Radiation is good. It's all good for you, etc. This is just such marketing ploy and deception, but it's purposely being controlled. There was a movie. It was all about the Kennedy assassination. It was very good. It's called Executive Action. This is one movie I'll refer to. There are so many, and we have a show called Real to Real where we go over these things. But this is a very good one. As an example, it's 1973. You can see parts of it. You can see it on YouTube, called Executive Action with Burt Lancaster. And there's one scene in there where they're talking about depopulation. And they're talking about 7 billion people in the world, and this was before the chemtrails. But the military was still gassing people and testing these things all over the world, but most people don't know that. And this was 1973, this movie came out, so they probably started it in 1970. And in the scene in there, Robert Ryan is talking to Burt Lancaster, and he's talking about depopulation and getting the population down from approximately 7 billion to around 500 million. And this is what we're seeing today. This is the chemtrails, etc. And especially what most people don't know about, and anyone can go online and find my books about tap lining. It's all over. You can Google it. They do not see what's taking place in their astral bodies because most people have not been taught that they have more than one body. They've been one-dimensionalized to a point where people just walk the streets mainly and look at their cell phones. The society has been so robotized, and it's only going to become more so. This is where the humans are actually going to interact with the mechanics of robotism to be even more controlled, and we're seeing it. They have these devices now where you actually put on your arm and the chip and things like this to where people become more mechanicalized. And it would seem a convenience in society, but this is a prison planet. You're just in the prison yard. Whether it's the good side or the bad side, you're still in the matrix. And until you discover your real awareness, you are trapped here. And this is a huge journey to get out. The new you is the direct connection now. When I took the Rod of Power in 2001, which I now call the new wave is the new man, I have renamed that. And those people that use the idea of the Rod of Power, it's a fallacy. It no longer exists. It is no longer recognized by the real universal guides or life itself. Have nothing to do with any of this nonsense and deception. And so if people want to believe and put their faith or all these ideas that have been created into these systems, they have the right to do so. And I knew many, many higher initiates here in Southern California. And I also saw them on the real side with Joni, with reptilian Joni. You look at her close, you see her reptilian eyes. She is reptilian. And they like their little control positions, their higher initiates, their Risas, their Vahanas, whatever. And respectfully, fine. You can have whatever you like, just like the president and Congress and the senators. Most of these people are either reptilian or they're controlled by the reptilian. The main factor being the Vatican in the world. These are the puppeteers of the world, the main reptilians. And so many, many people know this, but most people really do not want to see it. The earth is simply a place that we gain experiences from until we are ready to recognize who we really are. And it takes a lot of comparison to do this. So we go through many lifetimes of what isn't real and all this characterization, you might say, from lifetime to lifetime. A lot of people get caught up in this, and that's fine, whatever. But eventually the whole idea is to recognize the all is, the isness, life is. And this is what Rebazar in one of Paul's books, The Far Country, referred to, and it was a hint. All you can do is hint at this. People have to really wake up and recognize this for themselves. It is a recognition. It is not a place you go because all life is here and now, and all the so-called levels of life are here and now. It's a recognition is what it is. But this is what I was shown in 2001 to bring out, the is. And so for the most part, most of the world has been indoctrinated, conditioned, and trained to look to the fallacy of the gods of man and the doctrines that the reptilians have created. They've created all these doctrines, from the Bible to all the Quran to all these other things to control the masses. It's just very, very real. And anyone can prove this to themselves. It's not a matter of belief. It's not a matter of like, oh, I don't believe what Duane is saying here, and I'm not here to prove anything. Each individual must be the real risk taker. They must, risk seeing beyond what they've known in their conditioning in this matrix to better understand their own life, or they don't. It's just really that simple. That's how cut and dry it is. And just like the sun shining, there's no deception there. There's no belief, etc. There's none of these things that have been invented on the earth. And again, just look at the birds as how they are. They're not deceived, or they don't bow and kneel to gods. None of so-called nature does. And so what I refer to as the all-natural environment that supports all of us is actually all these so-called levels that we try and define, because there are endless ones, actually, but they're all here and now, and not only nature itself, but more so. And the earth is a fine place, but it's being destroyed on a daily basis very rapidly, and so there is a window of opportunity here. Simply sing the new you. You will start to have your own experiences. Instead of self-deciding what life is, let life show you what it is, more so than the ideas that you've come to know. And so basically there are a lot of groups out there that use the light idea, etc., and this is really the astral light. Everybody starts in square one, you might say, and this is where Paul started too. He had spiritual exercises, and the basic idea was to see the light and sound. Well, this was really the astral light, and Paul started off with astral projection. Then he expanded upon it into the term of soul travel, which incorporated all the five bodies. But he even referred to this as limited, because it is, this travel idea. Eventually to where the individual could, recognize, he used the term soul or soul awareness or soul body, but it's your real awareness is actually what it is, supersedes all of this. And so the old terminology no longer applies to the reality life is. It recognizes what I am presenting because this is honorable and sincere, and anyone can see this. There's no hidden agenda with the new presentation. It's just very, very real. And so those that have been conditioned to the old ideas, they're of course still hanging on to them, especially people that have been and brought up in religion for the longest time. What most people do not understand is that the so-called love idea is mainly from the astral realm or the emotional body and sensations and feelings, and this is actually marketed to people in a particular way to control them. And yes, of course, we love our family, our friends, and things that we have, sure. You know, when we attach feelings to them, we become very emotionally attached, and that's okay too. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense to be controlled by this emotional body. But many people allow themselves to do this, and then comes in the drama, and it's really on an emotional level. This is where you might say the consciousness that is created here struggles to know itself better, but it can't seem to get past the emotional part, because most people feel that, oh, if you don't have emotions, you're like nothing. And actually, there's so much more to life than the emotional part. It's not that you leave it altogether, but as long as you have one of the five bodies, there are the emotions and feelings attached. But actually, once you supersede all the five bodies altogether, you have an extremely pure and awesome awareness. This is where you are a free being of light, and you see everything for what it is. You have the real view of life itself, and from there starts the real adventure like no other. Very sincere, very real, like the sun shining, with no restrictions or encumbrances. As we look at, as anyone can look at the systems here, no matter what they are, from political, religious, spiritual, educational, scientific, they're all full of restrictions. They're full of rules, regulations, laws. It just goes on and on. There's millions of laws, there's millions of restrictions, and this is purposely done to control the masses, because this planet, like many other planets like it, are human farming. And a good example of what is coming to pass is the planet Mars. Most of these planets in the system had life on them before, and they still do have life, but it's not seen. Mars's atmosphere is basically gone because it was destroyed by those people that inhabited it, but they're still there. They're underground. And they're living in darkness, and they do have technology. And this is where people, actually fooled themselves into thinking that technology surpasses everything. Well, the Indians that were here first and were driven aside, as the United States, what we call the United States, was really a takeover by the bankers in Europe as a puppet country, and this is what is taking place today. And there's a lot more to this, and I suggest people investigate it to see what the world is about. But they never had, the original people here, they never had anything like this. They didn't need technology. They were fine. They worked with the natural environment. They never destroyed it. But here it is 200 years later, and most people are very happy, you might say, sensationally happy, to destroy the natural environment. And so it's a choice that people make. And so it would seem as though society knows what it's doing, but actually it doesn't. And so there can be better choices made. And this is why I created the All Solar Research Vessel Project, to educate people about the natural environment, the different levels of life, etc., and to how to eventually become self-sufficient. And that is when the individual wakes up to their real awareness. So it's a step at a time. This entails real guidance and a real education, which you will not find in this world, because, again, the educational systems, the basic idea is to get certain people educated and eventually into white coats and building poisons and bombs for those that control the world. And that's very, very real. It all looks official, etc. In Tesla's time, around the 1900s, people were more into natural health, well, as the bankers and the controllers came in to be more so as they manipulated their way into the system. You look at the early 1920s, 30s, the medical system all changed into what it is today. And when I was younger, sure, we had aspirin and a few things like that, etc., but not like today where it's all drug commercials, everybody takes drugs, etc. And do these things really work? Are they a cure? Do they heal things? No, they don't at all. And the natural environment, the natural foods are being destroyed, being bombarded by chemtrails and all kinds of pesticides and poisons. And it's almost, this is acceptable to almost everybody. They agree to this. It's all about agreement. And everything is polluted and poisoned on this planet. It's saturated with it. And every day it's becoming more so. And this is because everybody's agreeing to it. Mostly everybody. Not everybody, but a lot of people are agreeing to it. And those that control the planet, they're the ones doing it purposely. And so again, each person, has the right to decide, but you have to have the courage. It's not about rebelling. It's not about protesting or demonstrating. These things are fine. Some people like to do it, and they're very good at it. But it's really about becoming more aware and waking up and to see what you're agreeing to and deciding to make a better choice. And so for us, with the new presentation, we are doing the first part of the Vessel Project, which is to let the world know. And as we go along, etc., we will establish certain things on the planet that people can take a look at and work with us to where everybody becomes self-sufficient. We're all beings of light. Nobody controls the situation, but there is a management position to where it works for everyone. That's the whole idea, not for the certain few, not like Joni that's stashing all her money away in the corporation. That's the whole idea. And for the governments and et cetera, stashing all their money away. The public has been ployed and deceived for the longest time. I would say that you people that are listening, you really do not need the deception any longer. Simply wake up and learn to get your own answers. It's not that hard. It's very, very simple, and life will show you. Life knows everything that's going on here, and it's okay with it. And what I mean by this is that this is a simulator. People have the right to make a choice, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever the outcome, because everyone must face themselves. Nobody gets away with anything, and life itself sees what each person is doing, but life itself wants each individual to become more aware and free. But it's up to the individual to decide that, and this is where many people will just stay in reincarnation and karma and creation. You might say almost forever, because they keep deciding it. It's simply a decision. And it's just really that simple. But it becomes a huge journey. And because of all the encumbrances, because of how the matrix is here in the 5 levels of creation, and within those levels, just like on the earth, there are many dimensions here all over the place that are seen and not seen, and the astral realm has hundreds of levels to it, which is bigger than the physical so-called universe or realm. And as you go up the ladder to the causal and mental worlds, they're even bigger, and they have unlimited levels to them, so it would seem like creation is endless. But it's not about the places in life. This becomes the difference. It is about the recognition of what is real and what isn't real, and what is simply what it used to be termed as Maya, or the appearance of things. There is a great difference. And most of these religious, spiritual paths are really caught up in the astral realm with all their rules, regulations, their gods, their masters, their deities, what have you. Where people stay subordinate, they bow and kneel, they pray, etc. And what they're really agreeing to is a submission of slavery. Again, do you see birds doing that? No, they fly free. They don't acknowledge, agree, or bow and pray to anything, and they're fine. And they don't have a 9-to-5 boring job that contributes to the destruction of the natural environment. They don't do that. And so again, nature here is a great demonstration, but how many people are picking up on it? Many of the children are. They're seeing this, but are the adults listening? when I raised my daughter, I knew who she was. She was amazing. And we all always went over her so-called dream experiences, her real side experiences, and her experiences with the real guides, etc. And she was amazing. She could leave her body. She could go to the different levels, etc. And at a certain age, she became the teenager, and she's going through that experience now. She's older. But at 12, the bubble popped, and she said, well, Dad, I don't do that anymore, which is fine. That was her choice. But the idea here is that those people that have children, if they take the time to listen to them, they are amazing because they're very open to the real side life is. But for the most part, parents indoctrinate their children to be mechanical according to society. I never did that with my daughter. I figured that she would learn whatever she would and the choices she would make in society when the time came, but I never pushed any of that on her. My former wife was a school teacher, so I figured that's going to take place anyhow. So, I went through the role of the parent having this experience with this other being, which was terrific. And it is a great experience to be a parent. I resisted for the longest time. I really did. Because it seemed like my personal life, my surfing, my business was more important. But then when my daughter came along, it changed my whole view, and it was great. And I actually wanted to have more because children are very, very real if you allow them to be, and the experiences with them are huge if people listen. And that's kind of the basis of what I wanted to express today. It's not about a good or bad situation or a put down. It's just, we are worldwide educators. I'm simply reporting the news as I've experienced it. I know that there are many people out there that want to stay emotionally attached to things and ideas. That's their right to do so. What I'm presenting with the new presentation, anyone can prove to themselves, but most people won't. They will just simply not see past the knowledge, or you might say read between the lines. Very few people catch on with this. And when Paul was here and when he left, he brought a lot of people up very fast. In the few years from 65, let's say, till 70, 71, when he left in September 71, there was actually many higher initiates, and he brought these people up very fast to establish these positions for these people. And they had been, in certain things for lifetimes, and they had been prepared. But for the most part, most of them left when Paul translated because they really only grasped the outer teachings that he had presented. They really didn't see what was taking place. And so very, very few people see this. They actually become attached to the idea of the outer formulation. I always looked to the real side. I always followed the guidance, and I was shown by Revizar. And then when Paul left, he was actually even closer to me. I was shown by him. They're like my parents and Yabel, etc. They guided me along and protected me, and I watched this scene take place with the outer organization where most people didn't pay attention. And so, this has been Joni's marketing point. She's very good. I congratulate her for the adventure that she's created. And it's very, very good. And she has gotten the membership to such a point that they almost don't know what's going on. They basically don't. It's basically one-dimensional, and to where the real side experiences and the boys, the guides, Revizar and some of the boys are working with those individuals that do see more. But on the physical side, many of them are very attached to the outer organization, so they're still tap-lined. And the boys don't take this away. In other words, they don't take away the little toys. It's like taking a toy away from a child. They don't do that. So people in their minds think, well, I had this experience years ago with Paul, or I had this or whatever. Life is always now. It's always new now. And this is where most people do not see the true nowness of life. but you also have to recognize the true reality that you are. And the spiritual idea, the God idea, the masters and gurus, these days are all gone. What people are seeing here are ghosts. That's all they see. And just like the Christians that pray to Jesus and whatever, Jesus had nothing to do with Christianity, had nothing to do with these reptilian religions. These are ideas in people's minds. I suggest you let life show you, go to the real side, graduate from these emotional attachments, or you'll be back in more lifetimes like you've already been here, attached to these same old ideas. People come back lifetime after lifetime, and they hear about Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha or whatever, and they're attached to these things, and they drag these emotional attachments from lifetime to lifetime. Each one of us is a beam of light brighter than the sun. Our real destiny, you might say, our real adventure, actually, is to wake up to who we really are, beings of light, free from everything, and then life becomes even bigger. We start to see and recognize what cannot be seen through the five bodies at all. You must discover, first of all, your real awareness beyond these, beyond creation altogether. And so again, until the individual really gets a grip and faces their emotional attachments and has the courage to do so, to see how bound up they are in this matrix and how they are controlled here, well, then they stay the prisoner. And so the new presentation is very, very real, but each person must prove it to themselves. And really, to start with, all they need is the new you, just to start to sing it before you go to bed, and all of a sudden you watch your dreams. And of course, there's going to be little mischief makers in the dreams also. There's going to be those individuals that you knew. They're going to try and pull you back or chase you and try to frighten you, but eventually you get through that, kind of like the bullies at school. Eventually you get to a point where you see what's taking place. It takes a little bit. Some people are faster than others. It just depends upon, the created consciousness of the individual and how they react to things. But and just like in school, some people excel faster than others. And this is really a school here of hard knocks, is really what it is. But for those who are satisfied with the implied freedoms that are with the systems here, you can have that for as long as you want. But if you want real freedom, free of everything and all restrictions, nothing needed, then you simply do the new you, and eventually you will recognize your real awareness, and you will supersede all the limitations that you have come to know. And it's okay. These are good references. Past lives are good references. But the past is gone, and there is no future except the one you create. And as you live in a real, true nowness, this is the new nowness of the all is, you don't need a future. You don't need a past. Everything is now, and you can see it all, stand in it all, and have it all, everything. Yes, very real. Huge journey. Anyone can do it, and it's available to everybody now. And so this window of opportunity, because of how the marketing ploy and the deception in this world is, it does not last simply because there is, at very few times on this earth and other planets and in the physical realm, is there an individual or individuals that have the courage to step up and present something real because of how suppressed everything is. The powers that be here, the manipulated individuals and powers and systems, they don't want this to exist because then they lose control, and they themselves project fear because they themselves are afraid. And they don't have to be, but they've trapped themselves, so they make other people afraid too, and they create fear-based systems. All the systems of the earth, political, religious, spiritual, educational, scientific, they're all based on fear. It's a hidden factor in all of them. And so again, did the Indians create any of these systems? Did they have governments and presidents and rules and regulations, constitutions? No, these things are based on fear. It's a starting point, but it is not the end result, and is not the ultimate. And as many people think God is the ultimate, etc., well, guess what? Life is bigger than the gods of man. It really is. And anyone can meet these so-called gods, and you will see them for what they are. They're kind of like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, is what they really, really are. And so I know that most people are very emotional attached to these ideas. Well, it comes to a point where it's a real wake-up call. You wake up to real freedom, or you stay with the implied freedoms and you stay trapped here. It's a decision each person makes. So that's a little brief outline of what I wanted to present today. I suggest people also read my books. They're free online everywhere. Just look up Duane, the Great Writer, and decide for yourself and test it. And all of a sudden you'll see that things are happening within yourself. And just take the risk, kind of like a test pilot. You wonder if the plane will fly or not, but guess what? You're the pilot. You decide if it's going to fly or not. It's all up to you. It's not about what I'm creating. I'm just creating a presentation. What I've created is not sacred or special. What it is simply a very good reference to what is possible for anyone to experience for themselves. All I can do is hint at the position. It cannot be given to you. So it's like a cookbook with all these recipes in it, but you got to make the meal and you got to eat it. The meal is not in the book, just the hint is. And so this is the Adventurous series. There's 8 books, and I've written. We have a lot of groups. I think over 500 or 600 on Facebook right now with different references, and the books are available there. I suggest starting off with Book 2, which is A Journey to Real Freedom, and then Book 6, Your Dream Visions. Those will give you a huge amount of knowledge and reference, along with the new youth sessions. You will succeed if you continue on with yourself to better understand what's going on in this world, and with yourself and your real awareness on the real side, and that which is termed dreams, which are actually other levels and dimensions that you're experiencing all the time, but you're simply not recognizing what is taking place. But eventually you will, and that's the best part, to free yourself altogether. And with that, I'll conclude for now. And is everybody still there?
Yes. Thank you, Duane, for exposing all of that. Do you want to take a caller, or do you want to go on? Does Ava have something to share, or what would you like to do?
It's whatever. We have a caller?
We have several.
Oh, really? So we've stirred up the nest out there.
Well, they're known. They're.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't call them regulars, but they're known to us. We know them. We have Dimitri. Maybe.
Okay, go ahead. You guys go ahead. Whoever wants to talk or whatever, go ahead. I'll listen. Go ahead.
Oh, hello, everyone. We're all blown away by your talk, Duane. That was really good.
Well, I'm glad somebody listened because, yes, you kids are great. You kids have a lot of experience, too. Go ahead and share something, whatever you like. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, what I have to share is really, it works. This is all I have to share. You just read these books and you practice it, you do these sessions, and it changes you. It's very deep, and it is really wonderful.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Val, do you have something?
Yeah, in terms of, in regards to the position that Duane has, the new wave, what used to be called the Mahanta, I was going back to some of the old YouTube videos and watching Darwin and a young Harold try to explain their position, or their pretended position of being the Mahanta. Whatever position they had was just very interesting about what words they used and how they were actually very real in terms of trying to explain it to people. One was Darwin with a host, a regular host that hosts different religions and people and religions, and it just and I use it as a comparison, watching that and then listening to Duane, and the difference is what a lot of times we use as or the comparison we use as a means of like understanding or gaining awareness, and it's just what a difference. I mean, what Duane has defined it so much more clearly, and the view is so much more expanded than what these other fellows are trying to portray, and that's one reason is because they don't see it. I mean, that's the obvious thing. They don't. If they don't see it, how can you explain it, or present it, or share it? But the difference. I mean, the clips I saw were 70s, I guess 80s, and these were young. They were just getting into their position, and I can see how difficult it was for them. I mean, I'm just my viewpoint. I don't know if it's difficult, but it's in a way it is the communication part of relaying these invisible sort of realities or awarenesses. It's a challenge, and but I'm reminded of one of Paul's quotes, and that was like this position, the New Way position. It's they're so frank. People in it are so frank that it's hard for people to believe because it's so frank. You can use the word real, but it's just so it's so right there. It's so obvious in a way that people are so conditioned to believe in things and ideas and feelings and attitudes and things like that it's hard for them to even recognize it. So again, the comparisons is always a good way to come at these things sometimes. What's real, what's not, what makes sense, what doesn't. So yeah, so I just that's my share. I wanted to share that.
Thank you, Val. Val, you have been, like myself, early 70s, you were with the corporation, and you saw the difference taking place over these years, because you were there almost 40 years or so, and that's a long time. And there's still people that have been there 40, 45 years and even more, and they have so-called prominent positions, and I understand. They don't want to let those go. They have a certain recognition there, a certain affiliation, but what they don't see is what's really taking place on the real side and all the deception. And unfortunately, we have this today. I'm not labeling this as good or bad or whatever. These are choices. These are simply choices. I never mention morals. I never mention what is right or wrong. And I don't compare myself to Paul or the Mahanta idea, which some people do. Each position is its own. That's just very, very real. In the physical sense, we do have this labelization. We do have this literalization, which is fine. That's a point. But it's just a reference is all it is. It's just a reference. And so my position on the real side, I don't see myself as anything but a being of light like everybody else. That's just what I see, and I like that. It's a freedom for me not to establish an idea here like Darwin and Harold and many other people do in their minds, thinking, well, I'm this, or I'm the president, or I'm the master, and I'm the Pope, whatever, and I'm very special, and people are to look up to me. No, I don't carry those ideas because I've learned through my experience that it's all worthless, and the titles are worthless. I just use Duane the Great Writer or the New Wave as the new man for someone to relate to, but realistically, I put everybody before myself. That's why I never created the membership. What I do is I educate you and others and those that are willing for all of us to stand with each other and share whatever position we have and have fun on this adventure, creating something that works for everyone. That's the whole idea. There's no master-student idea anymore. It's really become master and slave, just like the old days. It worked for a while, respectfully, but it's not working. And that's the proof is in the pudding, you might say. It's not working. It's not working anymore. And so if people don't want to see that, that's their choice, but it's so easy to see. And you recently stepping up here with us, and it didn't take you long to recognize what's going on because you'd been through this, and now you see yourself. You want to tell a little bit about that, these other things, they're not working anymore. They haven't been for the longest time.
No, I didn't see it until I saw the comparison. When I was going along like in my happy-go-lucky la-la land in Ekankar, but then I saw a friend of mine introduced me to you, and it was in the comparison that it was just, and to me it was just obvious that there's a more expanded view here than I was seeing, and I was being, whether it was good or bad, I didn't really have. At that time, when I was introduced to this, I didn't have a judgment, but it was obvious to me that there was much more. I mean, not just a little bit more, but within me there was so much more that I found out about that I wasn't getting in the other system. And this is not a system, but it's just the view just instantly expanded, and every day even more so. It's an adventure.
Yes, and your friend Lila, who finally stepped up here, and Lila's in her 90s. She's a sweetheart, and after a while there, in a short time, she had this great experience on the real side, showing her what's taking place, and she was exposed to the is itself. And like many of the experiences we have on the Skypes, we don't release all those to the public, but some of them we do. People are working with Rebazar and the boys on the real side, and they're showing people the tap lining that's taking place with Ekankar and all the religions of the world. All that's taking place here is the world is so infected, just like it's poisoned. Just like everything is poisoned in the world, it's all infected. And we're not saying we're the good guys, but we're very sincere and real, and we're direct with the true reality to clean all this stuff up, clean up the tap lining. When people are willing to earn their way out of what they have agreed to, the tap lining that will be taken care of, just like Ava and many, many others. There's another gal in Singapore that we know, started doing the New You. She had all kinds of problems, physical problems, and when she started doing that, all of a sudden it started to break loose very, very fast. And so these things worked at a certain time when I was in the corporation. With Paul's time, the HU, the Hugh word, did work, but it became so saturated, Darwin started to take it downhill, and then Harold and Joni, and as Joni came in, she totally infected the whole system of things, and so the all is and the real guides threw it out. It still does work to a certain point, but it's in the lower astral realm, and those people that carry Harry's picture around or the president or whatever, they're going to be tap line and stuck there too. I see where Harry's at. I see where Harold's at, and he's very, very trapped in dark places, kind of like in that Sigourney movie, Aliens 1, where they go to the planet and it doesn't look very good. And so again, there's lower parts of the astral realm there. They can disguise themselves pretty well to people on the real side, but eventually it's all showing up. We have thousands of people all over the world having experiences now, and they are seeing this, what is taking place with the systems of the world, those that were in the corporation. They're seeing this. They're seeing the tap lining. It's all becoming exposed because people are waking up and they're becoming more aware. And life is the great adventure. You have to be the risk taker. You really do. It's about, learning to see what else there is and not being really self-satisfied. This is where people come to Earth and they think, well, gee, I'll just make my home here. But the Earth is a dangerous place. And, it's almost like it doesn't matter how dangerous it gets, people are still wanting to make their home here, thinking that, the powers that be that are creating all the deception and the destruction purposely to eliminate most of the population are going to fix things, or that Jesus is going to come back, or God will. No, these are ideas that have been marketed to people. Each person must decide to recognize themselves, and you might say save their own life. This is the only way that it works. It doesn't work any other way. Because each person, once they recognize who they are, because all life is here and now, it can't be anything else, then they're okay. But it's a huge journey. They must take the risk to see more than just their outer physical self. And so, yes, the comparison is very important, to have that instead of just the idea of, you must believe this, or you must, bow and kneel, etc., and believe, or you're not a believer, so things aren't happening for you. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with really figuring it out. You must figure yourself out. And I don't use the word problem. Paul did a lot, and one of the statements that Rebazar made to Paul and I in the younger days, because I was there in Book 3, which I call Book 3, the real far country, the far country. I was there too, but it wasn't known at that time. And Rebazar made the statement, you are your own problem. And that's very real. That really encompasses all of it. And so you can be in your la-la land here. You can emotionally think everything's okay, fine. You have that right. But eventually, everything shows up. All deception shows up. It really does. You throw something in the river, it shows up downstream, doesn't it? And as people and these industries, these businesses, which are made up of people in agreement, pollute the rivers, eventually it all shows up. And so does all deception, because that's just how it is. Creation faces itself. And so as the individual surpasses creation and recognizes the is, like the sun shining, it's a pure position without restriction. And what Paul called it as the cause, and here we have cause and effect. Karma is a little hard to understand for most people. They think it's a belief. But it's simply cause and effect. Everything here is cause and effect in creation. This is like the big sandbox that life created for us to go through the process, like a butterfly, is first. The caterpillar goes through the metamorphosis of the cocoon and eventually becomes the butterfly, and this is what we're doing in creation. At first, we're the body on the ground here, scratching to survive, and then we go through the transformation of recognizing more, and eventually we become the butterfly, and we recognize ourselves. So it's just very real, very simple, very wonderful, and if you can see it, you can be it. But you must learn to be it. It's not something like a membership to where you just join something and it's all taken care of for you. It's like, the master will take care of it. He protects me. I just go off to my job and, sell GMO hamburgers to everybody, make a lot of money, and I'm fine because the master is protecting me. No, there's a bigger picture than that. It's waking up to everything that's going on, seeing, everything that's taken place. And this is what Paul and Rebazar referred to. The idea was nothing is taken for granted, and that means nothing. But in the human sense, most people take everything for granted, thinking this or thinking that, and liking the ideas that they create and thinking, this is this and this is that. It's a thinking mode about putting their attention on ideas that they want to work so that their personal life is all taken care of, because that's more important, and their so-called membership or joining or their adventure with this is secondary. I've taught a lot of people since 1970, 45 years, and I have seen them come and go. And most of them take a little bit here or there, and they take the knowledge thinking that, oh, I know this now, and especially in this day and age where, oh, I know what Duane is presenting, so I get the basic idea. But no, they don't see it at all. Not at all. And anything that you decide, there's always more and there's always so much more that is not seen. And so only certain individuals will explore this and make it their lifestyle, a total reality of their beingness. And this can be experienced on the real side, and this becomes the difference, especially with those who are having the real side experiences with the real guides and myself and Ava, etc. The real intent of the individual is exposed on the real side. But most people, if they're afraid to look at it, then what they're doing is that they're holding up the front of deception, wanting it to be a particular way, pretending that it's okay because it really looks good. And they can do that for as long as they want, and life will not take it away. And this is where, as the membership as an example is waiting for an announcement from Harold or somebody or the guides, they're not going to tell people how to live. They have to discover that for themselves. And besides, is the government here? Do you ever hear the president talking about the chemtrails or GMO food? He's not going to tell the public about it because they're controlling. Is he going to tell the public about HAARP and all the storms and earthquakes they're creating with that machine? Is he going to tell the public? Is he going to tell them how lethal the vaccines are and the smart meters and on, and the pharmaceuticals? No, because they're the ones doing it. They want to keep the deception going. And so you're not going to hear it from the corporation or Harry or Joni because this is really a good business for them. And it's okay. This is a business world. This is why I called it the new presentation, simply because it is new and it is a presentation. It has nothing to do with any of the labelization here. It's very real and very direct, but in the same sense, on this level, it is also a business, and the Solar Vessel Project is a business, and so we won't be reinventing the wheel here. We will be working along the lines of what makes sense in this mechanical world, and at the same time educating people about the natural environment, and that becomes the focus to make better choices. It's not a perfect system here because it's physical, but we do the best we can because there's huge resistance that doesn't want it, even though the politicians and religious leaders talk about, we need to clean up the environment, we need to make better choices. Those are just pretty words. Do you see them doing anything? Do you see them out there with their shovel and planting trees? No. They just do the pretty words. And when people try to do something, there's many films also. There's many documented things and just silly things like I saw this one documentary, this one film that was this little video on YouTube where these people were having a picnic in the park somewhere. I don't know where it was. And it was organic food and whatever. They had a meeting. There was 10, 20, 30 people. And the local authorities came along, the health department or whatever, and actually took the food and dumped it in buckets and put something on it, bleach or something, I don't know, something ridiculous. This is the world today, and you're seeing this all the time. You're seeing the police brutality. You see it all over Facebook. You see all these radical things taking place because even though these ideas are implied in society, they're really not so. Not so at all. And it makes people more fearful, more controlled. And it's very, very real. So either you wake up and you stay lost in the matrix, or you stay lost in the matrix, I should say. It's a choice. Again, it's not good or bad. It's not about morals or ethics or, he's a good person and this is this and such. It's simply about choice. Simply look at your agreements. What are you agreeing to? And for billions of people, getting up each day, starting their car, poisoning themselves and everybody else is a way of life. And I suggest that, and I've suggested this many times, people can go on YouTube, they can run their car in water. It might cost you $500 or $1,000, but Just think what you are doing as one person. That's a start. The technology is already available for everybody to have free energy and whatever, but that is not the solution for one's real awareness. But it is making a better choice here physically. So it's good to understand the different levels of life and your real awareness, because it's not about how much money you make, how much position you have, and what you can do here, freely walk around. It's really about waking up, because guess what? You're still growing old. And at some point you're going to forget this lifetime and you're going to stay lost, and you will come back into future lifetimes and you will have forgotten that you were here, and it's going to be a lot worse, because it's more than evident of what is taking place. So this is, like Val said after he attended a few Skype meetings, this is a no-brainer, right, Val?
Yeah. And then I did have a question came up too about, like, I figure this is because the state of the world today, and we've been prepared, but what difference is it how we're being brought up so very quickly, it seems like, in Paul's day when he brought up a lot of people very quickly? Is there there's similarities that it seems like there's an urgency here too with the way things are?
Yeah, there's only so much time. That's very real. And, just like Fukushima is an excellent example, and if people really study what took place, that was not an earthquake. That was purposely done. There's a whole lot more to it. I suggest people that was purposely done. And those people that were in that earthquake, I've seen them and the tidal waves that took place that moved very quickly. I've seen them in the astral worlds, and they've got a lot of lifetimes to go just to balance themselves out, because the shock that they went through is huge, and there are thousands upon thousands of them. And so, yes, anything can happen in this world. Politically, what we're seeing, like in Syria, that's all a setup. That's World War III. It's quite obvious. And so there's a lot of things happening on the planet. I suggest people look at the Internet, and more so than the 6 o'clock news, because that's all programmed to keep people unaware. It's just very, very real. This is how the world is. Because there's a lot of cattle out there, okay, and they don't want the cattle to run wild. And we have the gun issue here and all this stuff, and the red flags with these school shootings, etc. A lot of people know about this. They're waking up. They have the courage to face this and to just be real. It's not about rebelling. It's not about destroying others. This is what has taken place for a lifetime. It only adds to more drama and situations. The reality is that as you become more aware, you make better choices, you create your own situation, and that's what we're doing here. We're creating a new position. We're not rebelling against the system. We're not against the systems. We're not against anything. We're just working with the natural environment and making sense of our lives. It's just that simple. So we don't really have the time to demonstrate, but we do have the time to do funny things on Facebook and let people know. We take the time to have the Skypes, our Skypes every day, and radio shows for those people that do want to know more and wake up. But to get out of the matrix, you need the real connection. You really do. The old ways worked for a while to a certain point. Really, they really didn't take anyone out of creation, but the new you does all the way, and the guidance is there. And yes, in a way, there is kind of an expediency, because again, the world is making choices, and it really doesn't even have to make choices anymore. It's on automatic. In other words, the agreement is on a subliminal level that most people don't understand, even though they have the outer information and knowledge about what's taking place. They are still controlled. It's not just saying, oh, I know this or I know that. For the most part, most people are subconsciously controlled, and those, the deceptors that rule this world, they know this. They don't care if people have the knowledge. They don't care if they spread it around, because they control them unconsciously, especially in their astral bodies. These shapeshifters are physical, astral, and they do it in the back of the astral body where most people are not aware in their dreams. These different projects that the governments have had for the longest of times, for hundreds of years, thousands of years actually. They do all this stuff, and they work in the lower astral worlds, and they tap line people in the back of their astral body, so they control them subconsciously. And this subconscious control reflects into the physical in its own particular way, into certain types of agreements, like a person that's hypnotized, and there are certain trigger words that make them react a certain way, and this is how it's done. And this is what most people don't believe. Will use that idea that they can't do that, that can't be so, because I never saw it on the 6 o'clock news, or my mom or my teacher never told me that, or the president never talks about that. Well, guess what? They're doing a whole lot more than you can even imagine, etc. So if you want to stay unaware and unconscious of where you're at, then just keep doing what you're doing, because you've already agreed to the deception and to the demise of the planet by simply living your daily life and just thinking that everything is fine. So until you really decide to take on the adventure like Robin Hood and James Bond and Indiana Jones, because life is about survival, it is not about satisfaction, personal satisfaction only. Yes, we do have our personal life, but at the same time, life here is about survival, and real survival is with your real awareness, and that's where you become self-sufficient to where nothing can touch you again. Yes. And that becomes the real adventure, but you have to learn to see and recognize it. That's huge, and for most people, they will not let go, especially of their emotional attachments and the memories that they've created, and also the future that they project that isn't here yet. And yes, people have a lot of nice ideas about the future, but what they don't see is that what others are agreeing to, which is creating a future of demise. So it doesn't matter what you think, it's what's going to take place according to the overall consciousness, and that is the deception that's already taken place and is already being demonstrated, how it is destroying the planet and the natural environment. So soon it will be like Mars here. We only have so much atmosphere, and it's basically all poisoned. And just like Mars, eventually they already have the underground silos. Those certain few are going to run to the underground and live underground. So if you want to be underground with them for future lifetimes, that's the future, is going to be underground on this planet, because the surface is being destroyed, terraformed, as Chris would say it here, as Chris was in the military. And, so much of the military is controlled by these people. They really don't even know what they're doing, how they're adding to their own demise. And the interesting thing is, many of these people that are are being controlled by the controllers to control the masses, they themselves will end up in the same spot. They just don't realize it yet, but they will. And so again, cause and effect karma also, the lords of karma and all these things entail here. Everybody must meet themselves, so a lot of these people have many, many more lifetimes, thousands of lifetimes, to meet what they have decided here presently. So with our position, the real guides, yes, take care of the karma, take care of a lot of things. If the individual is sincere and earns their way, they must earn their way individually. Nobody is drug along or carried. This is not a welfare program. It's to where each person decides to wake up and do their homework and become real with themselves. And then all of a sudden, you see that, hey, this is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to free yourself from all the deception and restrictions and nonsense that you've been marketed with. But again, a lot of people will agree to this marketing ploy. That's their choice. But that becomes the test. It's all about choice, is what it's about. Again, not good or bad or this or that, right or wrong, Democrat or Republican or all these things that have been invented. It's about choice, the choices that each person makes every moment, and that's learning to live now. And as you learn to live now, you start to see how life is. Not only the appearance of creation around you, this is not life, this is creation, and everything you see around you has been created. The trees created themselves, the grass, etc. Everything became so. And I know a lot of people like to think, oh, gee, there had to be a beginning and God created it all. Well, those are nice stories, aren't they? Well, actually, this has always existed, because each individual has, you might say, the power of creation. But this is where people have trapped themselves also, not realizing that there is more to life than creation itself, but this is the starting process, just like a caterpillar makes its own cocoon to eventually become the butterfly. And so it is at whatever point the individual decides to wake up and be the butterfly. So the process can be short or it can be long. It just depends upon the individual and how they pay attention accordingly. So this is the real adventure, life is, and it's all about choices, and anything can happen, and it will. Yes, go ahead, Val.
No, that's about all I had. Maybe Kelsey has something.
That was all really good. I tested you, and last night I was a Catwoman on the real side, and I had a lot of fun adventures. Yeah, you can do it for yourself. It's fun. It's cool. It's wonderful.
Did you go trick-or-treating on the real side, too?
No, I didn't do that.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. I have a couple of things myself. One of them is about creation and control. I'm going to try to provide a little bit of an analogy here for people to relate to, and that is with the game, okay, like Monopoly, Parker Brothers, right? Parker Brothers Monopoly, where the idea is to compete with each other and take control of the board. You know, when we were kids, I remember when I was a kid, we had a actual baseball diamond built behind our house, and the only time you could play baseball is if somebody had a baseball. So when the neighborhood kid who had the baseball had come along, we all played. But when they had to go home for dinner, the game was over. Sometimes the little guy would be a stickler. You know, he'd say, "Well, it's my ball. I make the rules." Okay, and on Earth, there are all these created systems: the financial system, the politics, religion, any of them. Okay, they created their system. They make the rules, and if you want to play, if you want to take part, then you have to obey their rules. That's how they've got these set up. Especially the financial system, right? Well, you want these dollars? Well, you got to play our rules. Right? You got to go to work. You got to sacrifice your hours and heartbeats and all these things. You've got to follow our rules, otherwise you don't get to play. You don't get to have the reward that we created for you. You know, your 401k, your nice house, your car, your beautiful wife, whatever. Okay? If you don't play, you don't get paid. So that's just a basic idea of how control is used here. If you take a step back and you start to recognize your attachments, your tap lines, and become indifferent to these things, you see all of a sudden that you actually don't need to play by their rules. You can create your own position. You basically you decide your position. So that's about that for that. Any comments? Anybody have a comment on that?
I have something, yeah. I want to share about tap lining a little bit. It's like, sometimes we think, or we might think that we can actually see through this, but the control is so deep. It's like an onion with different layers, and there are all these layers, and it just keeps going, and you don't really know. You can't really know. It's like when I came across Duane's presentation maybe like 11 months ago, I really felt that there were certain things controlling me, influencing me, but I didn't know what. And as soon as I heard his perspective about tap lines, started reading his books and things started getting clearer. And really, what I see now is that it's like he knows the center of that onion, and if you don't know, you just can't remove these layers. You don't even know that they're there. You might feel, and this is what I had. I could feel these influences, but I didn't know where they were coming from. I didn't know anything. I just experienced the effects, and it was actually influencing me. It was even having an effect on my physical body. And this is really a big part. I mean, we might think we can see this, but the onion is huge, and it's really, it cannot be seen. And every day now, I mean, this is for 11, 12 months. Every day, something just is like taken away from me by being on this. And it's very subtle, but suddenly it's a big thing that leaves you, and it really is freeing. It's wonderful, but the onion is huge, and this is really real. You need this connection. If you don't have this view, if you don't have the help, I mean, I had no idea there's no way I could do this, or I could even have some kinds of layers removed without seeing that.
Yes. Well, one of the things that I forgot to mention there was about the rules, and this, Dimitri, you reminded me, is the agreement. So as long as you decide to agree with the rules that someone else has created, the limitations that someone else has created for you, then they can control you. You see this in baseball, right, or the NFL, or any of these professional sports leagues. They're always changing the rules. There's rules changes every year, and people keep agreeing to them instead of just going out, into the neighborhood and having a football and playing together and everybody has fun. No, they got to add rules, and that's how the systems of Earth work too. They just keep adding rules and more restrictions, more limitations, and there you have the layers of the onion, like you're talking about, and people pile these on. And a great demonstration of that is in the movie Labyrinth with David Bowie, where the little girl kind of falls into a trash dump, and she meets a woman with all sorts of things on her back, and she's all hunched over, and her hair is gray, and she's old and wrinkly, and she's Sarah, right, the little girl's name. She's putting things on Sarah's back for her to agree with, and before long, Sarah's bent over, hunched over. But then she recognizes what her intention was and why she was there in the first place, and she sees through all of these agreements and frees herself, just like you're saying with the layers of the onion.
Yeah, and you're not seeing it. It's about agreement, but how are you going to remove an influence on your astral body if you can't even see it? And this is really, I was looking for this, but I didn't understand. I had no idea, and now you just sing the new you. You go through this whole process, and you don't even have to see your astral body, but you start to feel how it starts to be cleared. This is what is so wonderful. Yeah, you don't have to see the agreement that you have, but they're still being worked on. If that makes sense.
Well, that's the best part of the real guidance and the real education. It's not only here, but it's on the other levels. And as just like in school, as we go to school and we go through the first, second, third grades or whatever, and the teachers are there. We have different teachers, and the old schools, they had the same teachers, like on Little House on the Prairie, but it doesn't matter. We go through our process, whatever it is at that time, and so things are taken care of accordingly as we learn to wake up and recognize these things. So in other words, it's kind of like in school to where, when you've achieved the lesson, when you might say earned your way, then it's okay. It's like, okay, the teacher comes up and says, you don't have to do this assignment anymore. Or you've done enough. You have extra credit here, so you can go out and play, little Billy or whatever. And so the same is taking place here. The real guides at a certain point, they will step in and they will start to remove the tap lines. And this is what is not seen by many of these systems, and this is what took place in Paul's day. And even into Darwin's time, but eventually, as the reptilians took over that corporation and many corporations here, everybody's been, herded into a one-dimensional zone to where they just simply basically do the worshiping and praying, and they just agree to the systems and the guidelines become regulations, etc. And they're one-dimensionalized to, not really look at that anymore, not really see that anymore. And so, yeah, it's a real wake-up call. And, there are people out there that have a lot of courage, like David Icke and David Wilcox and other people that are referring to the reptilians and that. And this is fine, but still it's one-dimensional knowledge that people are getting. And what do they do with this? They don't really refer to the tap line and whatever. They refer to the reptilians, and a lot of people are very aware of this, very aware of the shapeshifters, etc., and the abilities these people have acquired. But that's why they have the body types they do too, the reptilian body types, because they have evolved like Gollum did in Lord of the Rings. Gollum in that was one of the hobbits. He was Schmied. He was one of the regular hobbits, but because of the ring and his obsession with it, it distorted him, and then his body type got really strange, his attitude, etc. And this is what has happened to these individuals that have come here for experience by the very fact of, kind of like the Klingons in Star Trek. It's all about control and destroy everybody else. They evolved, into a real bitterness, you might say, but, they still may have the technology, and this is where people are fooled again, is with the technology. But yes, like the onions, there's many, many layers, and like we go to school, but and we learn what we do, and this is where people, again, confuse, and when we talk about life, they're thinking about creation here on the physical level, thinking that, this is life. And no, this is creation, but the real part takes place on the real side when the real guides who have the awareness see that the individual, no longer needs certain things, but sometimes the very burden of it is necessary for the individual to maybe get through its arrogance or its vanity, to be a little more humble and more caring and seeing what is taking place with the whole of life and not just their personal life, wanting to grab and steal and deceive others. So for some, the tap lines and whatever will stay longer because the individual created these tap lines in the first place. It's their agreement. But for those that are very sincere and real and want to see what's really taking place, then the guides will come in. And for some people, they'll take care of them very quickly. Again, it's all about attitude and attention, and they can see the individual. It's just like when we were in school. I remember when I was in the 4th and 5th grade, there was this one girl. She was very exceptional. I didn't know her personally, but she was in some of my classes, and she skipped grades several times because she paid attention to the academic side. She just whizzed through these things where all of us were mainly struggling. But I finally woke up to the systems here, and I went through it. I learned to read and write and whatever, but at a certain point, it's like I had enough. I just want to go surfing, and I'll find some job to do or whatever. And so I wasn't the career-minded. And I was with Revazar and having the experiences, but there was a bigger picture that I wasn't seeing at the time because, again, I came into this life, even though I know why I came here. But when you come into the life and you have the body and the new body and the new mind and the senses here again, you're rather duh here. And so little by little I had to be kind of retrained into a position to where I am now, to where I recognize what's taking place. And it is that recognition. And this is what Paul had. He had the awareness, and he had the recognition and the heart and then sincerity, focus, and intent to provide something real, more so than, and he struggled with this too for many, many years till he finally figured it out because it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And so it's more than becoming popular. It's more than just saying pretty words to the audience and looking good. It's a very real position, which I love the adventure. I just figured for the most part I'd be doing it by myself because I've seen so many people come and go, and most people do not see it and how I refer to the is. And I don't even tell people to look for me in the dreams really so much. I do a little bit, for the most part. I say look for Rebazar, look to the is, etc., because we're all beings of light, and many people now have experiences with myself and Ava and others. We're all having this. All of you are. We have phenomenal experiences that are taking place, and with the Vessel Project, and so yeah, the best part of it is the real guidance. And again, as I've known Ava here 2 years and gotten to know her very well, we're usually together 6-8 hours a day for the last 200 years on Skype, Facebook, etc. She makes these wonderful images, and she's told me her stories over and over again about what she went through and all the pain, and she even had to take some pharmaceuticals for a while, and etc., and just therapy, finally to where she's fine today. In these last 2 years, she's basically healed herself. She no longer has the tap lines from the Hugh and the corporation and Joni and the reptilians. She no longer has any of that, etc. And these things affect, everybody a little bit differently. Some people can take more than others, but they all have them. They just don't see them. And so those that follow through with this or any of these systems here, they will be exactly where, you might say, the individuals that are deceiving others will be. They may think in their minds, oh, I'm going to my heaven or whatever, but the heavens of man, which are basically somewhere in the astral realm, are designated. I call them designated heavens because they decide if you're going there or not. They control that. They control your journey, just like they do here, control you wherever you're at. If you're at the bus station and you want to buy a ticket, you get in line and you're controlled and you're told which bus to get on, etc. Well, they do that in the astral realm too. They control people, and then they want them back again because they put a lot of time into people, deceiving them and making them servants and getting them to obey and be obedient. So they want these people back for lifetimes. They don't want them to wake up. And so again, when the membership or other people with corporations, etc., or those that love to be Democratic or Republican, and they wholeheartedly go with this, well, you're basically going to be stuck with these individuals that are deceiving others when you leave this life. And once you leave and pass over, then you're really going to start to see what took place on the earth and what is taking place, and then all of a sudden you're going to realize, how do I get out of this? And guess what? You basically can't. Because you've already set into motion your cause and effect karma, and now you got to come back unconsciously again and struggle with it again, trying to wake up, and it's really a struggle here. So the new presentation is a real gift to humanity. We are for everyone. Everything makes sense with us, and everybody counts, but they must step up and be real with themselves. And again, that's scary. Because this is a fear-based system, and just like Dimitri is saying, it's like the onion. There's many layers of fear, too. That's the biggest thing for people to face their fears. It's easier to pretend that things are okay, even though everything is so obvious in this world of what has taken place, and most people just talk about it, and they laugh about it. They giggle about it. Oh, yeah, I smoke cigarettes, and I'll probably get cancer, but it's no big deal. I like cigarettes. Well, okay, see, and again, this has been a choice and agreement. It's not that, as an example, cigarette smoking is good or bad. It's simply a choice, and it's also cause and effect. And the end result is it a benefit? Is it benefiting you? And so, but people like to do it, but for the most part they're hooked because there's so many drugs in it. And so the end result will be the deterioration of the physical body because of it. But people in their minds can pretend it's like, oh, my grandfather smoked and he lived to be 105. Well, he made it through to that point, but still it doesn't matter if he lived to be 500 years old. He still goes into the astral worlds, has to deal with the situation, come back unconsciously. Doesn't matter how long you live. These are ideas that people make up here, and so they're still in the matrix. They're still trapped, good, bad, or indifferent, famous or unfamous, rich, poor, whatever you have here, popular or not, you're still trapped in the matrix. These ideas don't get you out. You will have to come back, and as soon as you step over to the other side, you'll see what's going on, and it's like, oh, gee, why didn't I do this, or why didn't I do that? And now you have to come back unconsciously again, even more restricted. So yes, this what we're presenting here is just a very narrow window of opportunity right now to wake up, get with the new you, and you might say save yourself. Yes, and that was cool, Dimitri. Thank you so much.
The next thing that I want to share, actually, it's self-explanatory for the most part. It fits in with what Duane has been talking about today, what the rest of us have been talking about today. It is in regards to something that I wrote and posted up on my Tumblr blog. I've posted probably 2,000 things or so, 2,000 hits on my Tumblr, and something came across my what they call it, a dashboard. Something came across my dashboard last night, and it's in relationship to, well, I guess I'll use the term ancient masters. All right, people like Jesus and Pythagoras and Plato. Okay, so I had something to write about. I'm not going to get into the original post, but the basic idea is these men, women who've come in the past with the presentation. It's pretty short, so here we go. Okay, I write, these men were real. While on the earth, they provided unique presentations for the benefit of all life on the planet, each in their own respective time frames. It is because of men such as these that you know of the words Om, Hugh, Hare Krishna, and many, many others. The moment these sounds were introduced to mankind, those who were ready, those who had prepared themselves for a greater awareness, were offered the very real, yet very rare, opportunity to surpass all that they had known and step into the complete unknown. These old sounds, for their time, provided the focus to make the real connection to life itself, the all is. Along with these sounds, real guidance and real education became available, but only a very few ever recognized this and took complete advantage of what was in front of them. So what happened to these men, such as Jesus and Pythagoras? These few who stood with the courage to present something real. You may know at least that they were eliminated, while the lesser-known reality is that their presentations became ritual, doctrine, religion, otherwise known as control. Without a proper focal point and intent, the sounds which were once presented freely became property of the gods of man and their authoritarians who rule the earth. And they were quickly misused, saturated with misunderstanding. They're now used for taplining and control, keeping the unaware unaware. Lucky for all, however, that life knows exactly what is taking place, and a new sound has been presented to mankind. A new presentation is once again taking place, and for those who are ready, those who have prepared themselves for a greater awareness are offered the real opportunity to surpass all that is known and to step into the vast and endless unknown. But only those who have a sincere heart and courage to take the risk will succeed and become more aware of what is real now, the all is. Do you want proof? You can prove it to yourself.